For decades, fluoride has been championed as the miracle for dental health. But a recent study raises a chilling question. Is fluoride poisoning our children's brains? With mounting evidence connecting high fluoride exposure to decreased IQ, should we be demanding that fluoride be removed from public water supplies? Pam Killeen is a health and wellness coach. She's the co-author of The Great Bird Flu Hoax and host of the Circadian Reboot with Pam Killeen podcast. Pam, welcome back. How are you?
I'm great, Richard. Excited to pull back the curtain again this week with yet another very controversial subject that is very near and dear to my heart, because I have been working on this issue now for, about 20 years. And it's incredibly frustrating to try and educate our city councilors on this issue. When artificial water fluoridation came to be, it was about our teeth. Now, actually, there's been a shift thanks to this ruling in the United States by a federal judge. And now fluoridation is about our brains. All right, so I think we need to change our perspective on what this practice is really doing to us. When even the CDC, Richard, has said that it works topically, that fluoridation works topically, that it does not work when you ingest it. So if people want the choice, then they can actually rinse their mouths with fluoridated rinses. They can brush their teeth with fluoridated
toothpaste.
Because again, the science shows that if it does work, it works topically. So if people want the choice of using fluoride, they can use it topically. But you shouldn't be asked. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Just back up and talk about what the study shows. We talked about, decreased IQs. How much, they always say it's all about the dosage, right? So how much, we're constantly getting fluoridated water. Even if you don't drink it, you're showering, you're getting fluoridated water if the public water supply is, if they've added fluoride to it. But how much fluoride are they talking about? Give us sort of the parameters here of this study.
Well, basically, they fluoridate our waters to a point of 0.7 milligrams a liter. That's sort of the more general dosage. But the thing is you can't control what you're ingesting, Richard. And this is what becomes quite irresponsible. Because you can't go to a doctor's office and get a drug, and fluoride is a drug. You can't go to the doctor's office and get a drug without them doing a history of your health and knowing your size, your gender, etc. So they have to do a full background check on you when you get a drug at the doctor's office, and you get a specific dose. And when you put artificial water fluoridation in our city water supplies, you can't control the dose. And so that becomes extremely irresponsible. If a doctor were to do that, they would lose their license, basically just willy-nilly give somebody a drug. So because you can't control the dose, you don't know if that person, for example, is eating a lot of soup, where the soup is made from fluoridated water, or if they're drinking a lot of water, or if they're using Teflon to cook their food in, of course, that's going to increase their consumption of fluoride. So it's impossible to control the dose. Therefore, it's impossible to know what kind of impact that will have on that particular individual, because you don't even know their size and, of course, their age. And so the impact is going to vary. So it's so hard to know what the dose is, because it is an uncontrollable substance in the way that they're delivering it to us.
Right. So this is a newly published study. It came from a health scientist in the division of translational toxicology at the NIH, and this was a meta study. So they analyzed 74 studies from 10 countries to assess associations between fluoride and consumption and IQ in children. The researchers reported 52 studies had a high risk of bias, 22 had a low risk of bias. What does that mean, basically?
Some of the reports that you're going to read online are going to try to poo-poo this whole study. And so they're going to say things like, some of these people had bias, or it was a poorly done study, and so on and so forth. But the lawyer who spearheaded this landmark case will say that there's a lot of credible information outside of this study as well that shows lower doses also show very damaging results as well. And so, from back in 2006 and 2010, the American Dental Association, the Centers for Disease Control, they set guidelines even for mothers, pregnant mothers, and newborn infants, that they shouldn't be consuming fluoridated water. And so they knew about the damaging effects of fluoride way back in 2006, 2010, when newer guidelines came to the surface saying that mothers have to be careful when it comes to their infant's brain and its development. So the tragedy in that, Richard, is that if you're from a low income family, and maybe you can't read the fine print, maybe you have trouble reading, or you don't stay on top of what's on packages and their warnings, you may not run out and buy bottled water to use to make your infant formula. And so a lot of young women may be feeding their children formula and using city water, fluoridated city water, when even the American Dental Association and the Centers for Disease Control is saying, do not use city water to make your formula because they know about the neurotoxic effects of fluoride. So this study, while it is new and it is impactful, is not new information. We've known this information. Our government bodies have known this information for quite a long time, and they continue to put this reckless practice into our society. Now, we're hoping that RFK, if he does get appointed, that he will set more guidelines as to stopping this outright practice. All they have to do is turn off the spigot and they can stop artificially fluoridating our water supplies. But to backtrack, people have to understand that what they're adding into city water is something called hydrofluorosilicic acid. It is a waste product that the EPA itself deemed this product to be too toxic for the air, the land, and the water many, many decades ago. So what did industry do?
It was a byproduct of producing aluminum, wasn't it?
Right. It's actually called scrubber liquor, and they use it to scrub the smokestacks of the phosphate fertilizer industry. It's extremely toxic. It contains other agents like arsenic, mercury, even radioactive material. So it's very, very toxic. And the studies have not been done to show that it is safe and effective, no matter what the CDC is saying. But basically, it's a waste product that has been turned into a value-added product. So instead of getting fined for stockpiling this garbage, they actually turned it into a value-added product. So they make money on this garbage by basically using us as the waste disposals. And it's just been a horrible practice from the get-go. Fortunately, now there is more and more science to show how reckless this practice is. And we need to actually, one by one, work with our city councilors to stop this, unless, of course, we see some momentum coming under the Trump administration and RFK, who really do understand that this practice needs to stop.
Pam Killeen, health and wellness coach, co-author of The Great Bird Flu Hoax, and host of the Circadian Reboot with Pam Killeen podcast. PamKilleen.com. Pam Killeen, Killeen. I'll put the link in the episode notes. Pam, thanks so much for this.
Thank you, Richard.